first two of these weekly presentations, I have focused on issues related to our university's response to COVID-19. I will return to these issues in future presentations, but here I wish to take this time to offer some brief reflections on the passing of John Thompson Jr. John would have been 79 on September 2nd, having spent the past 48 years here at Georgetown. On October 3rd, with John's family, we will have a virtual celebration of his life. And when it is possible for all of us to gather together as a community, we will come together for an in-person celebration. John Thompson transformed Georgetown basketball. John Thompson transformed Georgetown University. He had a very different idea of what it meant to be a head men's basketball coach. Oh, he wanted to win, make no mistake about that. And he was a great basketball mind. But his first hire as an assistant coach was Mary Fenlon, whose very presence spoke of a commitment to academic rigor and discipline. Mary was with us for all 27 of John's seasons, working alongside John to ensure that every student who played for Georgetown would have the opportunity to earn a degree. We lost Mary in December of this past year. John arrived at Georgetown in 1972. He provided us with new ways to imagine, to interpret our values, and to see possibilities for what we could be as individuals and as a university. He led us to a place where we might better be able to live up to our ideals. He provided moral leadership, showing us what it meant to be engaged in the work of becoming true to our ideals. We were a different university when John Thompson came to Georgetown. We had not yet made a conversion, a metanoia. We hadn't moved into a new way of thinking, one that became possible with John's leadership. Others, too, especially Father Timothy Healy, and our Dean of Admissions, Charlie Deacon, who chaired the search committee that identified John, Rosemary Kilkenny, Sam Harvey, Gwen Michael, many others who shared in the vision and made the vision more of a reality. The vision to be truly accessible, to provide the conditions for academic success regardless of the color of one's skin. We became a different university during these years. New faculty, new students joined the community and raised the level of expectations of what we expected of ourselves, of what we expected of one another. We were privileged to be at Georgetown at the same time John Thompson was here. You can live your whole life and not have the opportunity to know someone, to be with someone like John Thompson. We had the opportunity for 48 years. Each year at the Kennedy Center on Martin Luther King Day, we hold a special event, a concert and award ceremony called Let Freedom Ring. We present each year to an important community leader serving the needs of our city the John Thompson Jr. Legacy of a Dream Award. At the Kennedy Center, we recently prepared this short film that captures some aspects of John's life.
Born in Washington, D.C., John Thompson Jr. grew up loving sports and realized early on that athletics could be a gateway to larger opportunity.
My first love was not basketball. My first love in sports were boxing and baseball. I was getting taller and taller, and the older guys, they said, put down that baseball. If you want an opportunity to go to school, you better get yourself on a basketball court.
Thompson led his high school to multiple championships and earned a scholarship to Providence College.
I ended up playing for the Boston Celtics, and you saw a lot of things that you hadn't seen before. You were exposed to a lot of things, which created an interest in education to me. I wanted to be educated so that I could help.
John Thompson was hired in 1972 as the men's basketball coach at Georgetown, where he became the first African-American college basketball coach to win the NCAA Men's Division I basketball championship in 1984.
National championship for Georgetown.
My coaching was the instrument I used to teach with. I thought really that you had freedom in coaching.
Coach also led his team to success off the court with a 97% graduation rate. And he kept a deflated basketball on his desk to remind players that the game wouldn't last forever. He used his position to advocate for the causes important to him. In 1989, the NCAA put forward Proposition 42, with implications for athletic eligibility that would disproportionately harm students from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Because of the success we were having as a basketball coach, and me being an African American, I had an obligation to say something about it, so I did.
Coach Thompson became one of its most visible opponents and walked off the court in protest, boycotting 2 games. He helped bring the issue to national attention and eventually led the NCAA to modify the proposition.
It is hard to put into words the kind of impact that Coach John Thompson Jr. has had on our community. He has held us to a greater expectation of ourselves, of who we are and who we could be. What John taught us is that in the end, institutions, universities, are our people. It is people who do the right thing, people who strive to live up to a set of ideals: justice, equality, equity, opportunity. John taught us that we need to look within into our own interiority to see how we are living up to these ideals. John taught us the importance of the pursuit of excellence. There is something that can only be experienced when one is performing at the highest possible level. He knew this from his time at Archbishop Carroll, at Providence, with the Celtics, at St. Anthony's, with 2 Olympic teams, and then over 27 years coaching at Georgetown. I remember going to the movies nearly 30 years ago. It was the late John Singleton's first film. He was the youngest ever nominated for Best Director for Boys in the Hood. You may remember the story. We meet a 10-year-old boy growing up in Crenshaw, East Los Angeles. The story tracks him through high school. His father is determined to ensure his son received an education that would get him into college and launched into a new future. Throughout the film, the symbol of hope, of this commitment to reach beyond the limits of their neighborhood at age 10 and later at age 18, was the t-shirt he wears. It was a Georgetown t-shirt. I remember calling John that night to say thank you, that Georgetown would be a symbol of hope to a young black teenager in East Los Angeles. This was due to John Thompson. John taught us the work is never done. We see that today as we take the next steps in reconciling Georgetown's history with the institution of slavery. We see that today in acknowledging structural racism, structural injustice, the institutional structures that perpetuate the legacies of slavery and segregation. When we see that the black and white wealth gap has not changed in 60 years, despite the progress represented in the civil rights movement. When we see that today black children are more than twice as likely as white children to attend high poverty schools and schools with lower resources. When we see that black men right here in our city of Washington have an average lifespan of 69 years compared with a white male resident who lives an average of 83 years. White women on average live 9 years longer than black women. When we see inequalities in employment rates, in home ownership, in police violence, in sentencing practices, and access to voting stations, in environmental degradation, and the impacts of climate change, we expect more of our nation. We expect more of ourselves. We have seen over the course of the past 6 months the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on our black communities and communities of color. John taught us just how much work we have to do. He knew his greatest impact would not be in winning games, though he won many, but in showing all of us the kind of people we could become and the kind of place that Georgetown could be. Our nation's institutions are responsible for many of the structures that shape our daily lives. The choices we make, the work we take on, matters. Confronting the legacies of slavery and segregation, understanding how they manifest today as racism and discrimination. This also requires interior work. We need to understand our own beliefs and attitudes, our biases, our prejudices, our ways of interpreting and making meaning in our world. We have to know ourselves and to take responsibility for our actions, to actively confront those biases that do harm against others. As individuals and as institutions, we must confront the enduring legacy of racism and undo the structural elements that sustain this legacy. We must account for our actions that do not live up to the expectations we have of ourselves and our communities in terms of providing access and opportunity, equity, and justice. We are better able to engage this work because we are members of the same community that was the home of John R. Thompson Jr. for 48 years. This is work we must engage. This demands our very best work. And John would expect nothing less from all of us.